Hey, everybody, I'm Patrick Verano. I'm the CEO of Emory Leadership Group, as well as the host of the podcast, Learning from Leaders. And I wanted to do this episode on personality because I think it's so important, either in what we call creating productive conflict or as it relates to influence. And I'm going to start off with a testimonial and one that I think is pretty strong here. I got into DISC as a vendor or as a preferred distributor of DISC in their assessments about 5 years ago. And it was only because of my wife, who had started a career with a large national mortgage company as a mortgage broker. And in part of her training, in her initial training, she had to go through a DISC profile, specifically DISC for sales. And what was interesting about that is my wife is not somebody that is really very excited when it comes to these kind of assessments. Doesn't put a lot of, I would say, credibility in them. And what was interesting is she was dreading going down and taking this assessment. Yet, as I was talking to her while she was down there, she was going on and on about the impact that this DISC assessment had in terms of how she was able to look at many of the people that she was starting to call on, that she could start to identify their personality styles and how it would impact how she would approach them based on a sales call. And I found this really interesting because prior to that, I can go back probably 20 years. If I were to pull files, I still have DISC assessments from when I was in the pharmaceutical industry. I probably did it 3 or maybe even 4 times throughout my career. And I always remember we did these at national meetings, and it was almost like this fun exercise of finding out what somebody's personality style was. And, oh, that's such a D personality, or you're so I when you talk about this. But there was never any follow through on that. So we never did anything with it. It was just sort of like this exercise. It felt like to fill space while we were at these national meetings. But I think we really missed an opportunity to leverage this tool, especially in that industry. And I use it quite frequently now. So to hear her talk about this really made me question myself. Well, maybe there is more value. If she's seeing this, then maybe there's something more to this. So when she returned, what I did was I went on to Wiley Publishing's website. They're the ones that do everything DISC, and that's DISC with a small I, because believe it or not, there is a difference. That's the one that they trademark. They had a certification program and a sort of a vendor relationship program. So my wife and I both went down, or over, I should say, to Minneapolis during the polar vortex. Probably one of the coldest experiences I've ever had, but it was one of the best experiences from a training standpoint I have ever been involved with, because not only did I get to understand DISC as it related to conflict and leadership and management and sales, but also I got to also sign up and certify to use DISC as part of another series that is something that was done in collaboration with Patrick Lencioni, who has written the book, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Well, with the DISC assessments, what we've done is we've created the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. And as part of that assessment, the team assesses themselves as it relates to the 5 dysfunctions of trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. But they also take an individual personality test. So when we get together as a group, and they're generally 1 or 2 day full day workshops that we do going over their results, people also get to identify their personality styles. And what's interesting is people start to see how their personality styles impact the relationships they have with others, especially when they weren't aware of somebody else's personality style, of what that meant, both the pluses and the negatives. And there are pluses and negatives to all of our personality styles. I think that's the important thing to recognize. So fast forward, I'll end the story, the testimony, with my wife. So here we are today. She's been in the mortgage industry as a broker for almost 5 years now. She is in the top 1% of producers for a company that has over 1,000 mortgage reps, right? So over 1,000 reps, and she's in the top 1%. And what's even more amusing about this is she will say that if you go to her profile, her company profile, it will say in terms of last profession, homemaker, that she was a homemaker in her last profession. To me, that is such a testimonial for how important it is or how valuable it can be to recognize personality styles, how important they are in terms of how we interact. And again, I look at it from a standpoint of either dealing with conflict or leadership, or how do we influence? And really, leadership is just about how we influence. So when we talk about this, the nice thing about DISC is that it's simple, right? There are 4 different personality styles, and it's not to say that we're only one personality style, but the model that is used is very easy to apply to any environment that you're in. And you don't have to have everybody take an assessment to be able to find out, are you a D, are you an I, are you an S? There are a couple quick things that we can do. And the more that you do them, the more in tune you get with how you can start to evaluate what somebody else's personality style is. So the first 2 questions that you would ask is, in dealing with somebody else, is this person fast-paced and outspoken, or are they cautious and reflective? So fast-paced and outspoken, or are they more cautious and reflective? And those are probably pretty easy. If we were to go around an office setting, or even at home, or in wherever your group is, you could probably start to put people in those 2 buckets. These people tend to be fast-paced and outspoken. These people tend to be more cautious and reflective. Okay, so that's the first one that we want to answer. The next 2 questions that we would ask is this person somebody that's more questioning and skeptical, or is this somebody that is more warm and accepting? And what I mean by that is this person somebody that if I were to tell them some data or give them some statistics on a story, would they take my word for it? That would probably be more warm and accepting. Or are they somebody that's going to want to say, show me the data. Let me see a little bit more of what you're talking about, because I don't really believe that's it. So based on those, what's going to start to happen is we're going to go into one of 4 quadrants. So the person that is fast-paced and outspoken, as well as questioning and skeptical, that's what we're going to call our dominance personality. And a dominant personality style is somebody that if you looked at the benefits to them, there's somebody that's about results, right? They want results. They like to win. They're competitive. They like to be seen as competent. And they're also action-oriented. They're going to just be decisive on things. They're not going to hold back. Now, the downside of somebody that is a dominant personality is that they can be seen as insensitive to other people, right? That they just sort of steamroll people based on where they want to go. They can lack concern or seem to lack concern for other people. And they can also seem to be impatient. They're the individual that if you show up at their office, they might say, I've got 2 minutes, go. What do you got? Right? Or let's just get to the point. They don't want all the background. They just get to the point. Now, as we'll go into some of the other personality styles, you'll see where this can really cause problems. If that's my style, and I'm dealing with somebody that's almost the opposite of my style, that person that's on the receiving end of this can look at me as, I don't care. I'm not interested in them, right? Whether as a leader or as a salesperson or a manager, however that might be. So part of this process is it's about awareness, right? I need to be aware of my own personality style. So I do that same test on myself. Am I fast-paced and outspoken, or am I more sort of cautious and reflective? And the better I can be at understanding who I am, what my personality style is, it gives me an opportunity to know that if I'm dealing with other styles, it's not about having them recognize my style. It's about me recognizing their style and getting in tune with them, right? So think about this like a radio frequency, right? If I'm on station 95.9 and they're at 101.3, it doesn't matter how loud I turn up the volume. We're never going to hear each other, right? I've got to find a way to get to 101.3 if that's where they are. And as the leader, as the salesperson, as the manager, if I'm the one that wants to connect with that other personality style, I better understand how they operate, right? That's critical. So when we move on, right, the next personality style we'll talk about is an I, and that's an influencer. So this is somebody that's also fast-paced and outspoken, but they're also warm and accepting. So this is the individual that is more about relationships and and connection with people, and they're more enthusiastic as well. They get really excited about stuff. Well, there's a downside for them as well, is that when the I's are at their worst, there are people that tend to be impulsive. They might not follow through on the details of things, and they can seem to be disorganized, right? Great at the big picture, struggle or more challenged to deal with the nuances of things. And I can speak from experience here because I'm somebody that is classified as an ID. I sort of sit along the line of the dominance and the influence, and I know that I have some of those tendencies in me as well. And on some of those, it's less about me trying to overcome those as to find other people or services that I can use that offset that sort of Achilles heel that I might have. So when we move down to the bottom of this quadrant, we'll think of this as a circle. We come up with steadiness, right? These are people that are they're warm and accepting, but they're also cautious and reflective. So these are patient or individuals, again, that are about relationship, right? They're also very concerned with being seen as dependable and as being sincere, right? Those are important things to somebody that's got the S personality. Well, the downside of an S, or the challenges with an S, is they can be individuals that become indecisive, right? They're not able to make that decision, maybe because they don't want to offend somebody. So they avoid change at times. And also they overly, they analyze things too much, right? They become too concerned too with what other people might think of them. So the last personality style that we move over to is what we call conscientiousness. And this is the individual that is questioning and skeptical, right? Similar to our D, but also they're warm and accepting, right? Or they're cautious and reflective, I should say. So when we're in this space, and a lot of providers, when I was in the medical space, used to fall in line with this space. They're about quality and making sure that they make the right decisions. So they're also about competence, just like the dominant person is, right? And their downsides is they can tend to be overly critical. They can also overanalyze things, and also they can tend to isolate themselves. They want to avoid contact with other people. So you can start to see now, well, if I'm dealing with somebody and I'm an I and I'm dealing with a C, the last thing that's going to work for me probably is just to come to them enthusiastically to ask them to make a quick decision on something, right? Because that's not in their nature, right? They're somebody that tends to be cautious and reflective. They like time, and they're questioning and skeptical. So my enthusiasm and my need for them to make a quick decision are going to backfire. And the same thing in conflict, right? It's not going to work. If I want to get somebody that's in that C personality style to even have a chance of buying into what I'm asking them to do, maybe it's a question of I've got to get information to them ahead of time and let them know clearly from an expectation standpoint what I'm going to be asking of them. And I also better make sure I've done my homework. I better have this thing tightened up in terms of not my normal disorganized self, the downside of me, but I better come with a clear agenda in terms of maybe a process on how this is going to work. I have to have truly thought this stuff out. Very important, right? And vice versa. If I'm C and I'm dealing with somebody that's more of an influence type person, if I want to get them to buy in, then don't overload me with data just to try and keep convincing me. I want to know sort of emotionally on some level, what's the impact of this going to be? Why is this important? Those things are important to me, right? And how does this fit in terms of the organization benefiting from this? Whereas if I think about it from a standpoint of a D, a dominance versus dealing with somebody that's steadiness, right? I mentioned earlier, steadiness is about harmony and connection and really needing a little more sense of acceptance from people, right? So if I'm the dominant individual and I'm just a C comes to me or an S comes to me with a question, and I am curt with them, just very quick to get, I only got a few minutes of time, let's get to the point. It's going to shut them down. I need to find a way to slow things down on my end, recognizing that this is the type of person that I'm dealing with. I realize that can be hard at times, but if I'm looking to resolve conflict or to get them to buy in, I need to find a way to get on their frequency. That's going to be the most effective way for me to really get us into a place where you're saying yes to whatever my requests are. Those things are so vitally important. And you can see again, what are we doing? When we're analyzing other people around us, I would challenge you, look at people that are close to you now and ask yourself, is this somebody that if you look at what they do, are they fast paced and outspoken? Or do they tend to be more reserved, right? They tend to be sort of, they stand back a little more. Are they somebody that is more questioning and skeptical? Or are they more warm and accepting, right? By knowing those, and we can probably think of who those people are, right? The people that every time you bring something up, they need more information, right? So we can start to put people in those spaces where we know now, like, okay, this is how, if I want to deal with this person, rather than get frustrated that this is somebody that always asks me additional questions, recognize that that's just their natural personality style. And if I really want to be effective with this person, I need to understand that and provide the frequency that's going to work the best in terms of making that connection. That's my goal with them. Again, whether it's gaining agreement in conflict or whether it's gaining agreement to follow a new procedure we're going to do or buy a service, whatever that might be, those things are critical. I'm one of these people that personality was not something that I ever really thought too much about. And now I will tell you it is an integral part of what I do. One part, not the panacea, not the only thing, but it plays a very important role in terms of how we interact better with other people. And the more we know this, the better we will be. I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope we're able to take some of this. There's a ton of information that you could go out there and Google on this in terms of how you sharpen these skills. But we all have this ability. It is a skill. So I hope you'll take this challenge and go out there and find a way to utilize these skills yourself. Because this is certainly an environment where we all can continue to develop. As I will often say in my podcast, Learning from Leaders, leaders are learners.